Ladies and gentlemen, there's an article in the Washington Post. Don't be fooled. Mitch McConnell will never vote to convict Trump. Why are people being fooled? There have been a number of stories saying Mitch McConnell wants to convict President Trump in the Senate impeachment trial. It's not going to happen. You would need 16 to 17 Republicans to side with Democrats. That's not going to happen. The interesting thing about all of this is why it's happening. The fact that we don't have, and I'm not a Republican, I'm not a Democrat. I'm just an American citizen who wants Americans brought home. I want Americans brought home from never-ending counterinsurgency conflicts. The Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld people set this country on a course of never-ending quagmires. Simply because we're not watching every single day what's going on in these areas of the world doesn't mean that this isn't the biggest issue we face. President Obama increased our involvement militarily in what the Lincoln Project and Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld created. We have no exit strategy. We're there in these places forever. It was President Obama who got us into more countries and also, with a failed NATO intervention, destroyed Libya. There are a great number of articles from prestigious foreign affairs and international relations publications blaming President Obama for what took place in Libya. That, I believe, is more of an impeachable offense than anything. If Trump caused what happened in Washington, and I condemn what took place, those 5 people should be alive today. But if President Trump caused that, then President Obama directly caused all the lives lost. You see the logic they use. The Lincoln Project people are directly responsible. They have the weight and they're culpable and the responsibility. They have the culpability and responsibility upon their shoulders of all the lives lost, all the suffering, all the sorrow from 20 years of counterinsurgency conflicts. Everyone who has been injured or suffered in some way in this country, according to the left's logic or Democrats' logic, should blame the Lincoln Project or Bush, Cheney, and Rumsfeld. People in other countries where President Obama's foreign policy ruined their lives should blame all Democrats. And is that so? I'm not saying that's my logic. That's the logic used by the media and Democrats. Trump says something or does something, all the repercussions that are tangentially linked are linked to President Trump. The reason we have this world is because Mitch McConnell and Republicans never really supported President Trump. This is a problem. That's the issue. There are Republicans that never supported President Trump. There are never Trumpers. You have a very bizarre... President Trump came in with the House and the Senate and an attorney general that undid everything. And the people who told you to trust Jeff Sessions were part of the problem. You have a message board giving disinformation and absurd nonsense where people say, gosh, I'm investigating. I feel really good. Well, join a softball team. Why do you don't engage in a destructive activity? That's like the worst thing you could ever do for any political movement. Is, oh wow, I'm really investigating. Yeah, you're investigating and believing nonsense. And the people on the other end of the message board are feeding you lies. And you're saying, yeah, Sessions, you just wait. Boom, shalakalaka boom. Oh yeah, it's gonna happen. Yeah, oh wow. That's not like, here's the reality. Here's why President Trump was impeached the second time. I'm going to give you this reality in a thoughtful, strategic manner so we regain political influence, okay? I've been discussing an ongoing investigation, and one of the biggest scandals of any president in modern history, Caligula's laptop, Biden and his son's laptop. We had the computer repair shop owner on Fox last night. A lot of people are like, no, nothing's going to happen. Well, you know what? Pretend. I mean, for the people who say that, who also listen to message boards, I don't know what to tell you. This is actual reality. Now, if you want something to happen, we need, hit subscribe to this channel, get this segment viral. We're on our way to 200,000. It's up and down. I was at 182, now back to 180. Oh no, I was at 180 and then went to 182, then back to 180. And then back to 182. Now I'm back to 180. So there's been like this little fluctuation within 2,000 subs. It's really interesting. People have been like, "Oh, we lost. Okay, I'm unsubbing." Like, that's not my fault. What do you want from me? It's not my fault, but it's not just 200,000. I want to get to 3, 4, 500,000. Eventually it'll happen. Okay. The only thing I can offer is my annoying personality and my analysis and evaluation, which is almost always spot on. If I go out on a limb here and there, that's not a big deal. And I can't even discuss certain issues anyway to explain why I said certain things. But anyway, this is a really, really important, potentially dangerous situation for the country. When you don't have an opposition, so the Republicans are not an opposition to the Democratic Party. They're petrified of media. There's no unity within the Republican Party, which is why state political parties were completely annihilated by the Democrats and outmaneuvered. You had red states going to Biden, and the state Republicans were completely useless, inept. On a state level, it's a tragedy. Like, you have the most incompetent state parties. These are the worst state parties that could ever exist. So you have Republicans on the local level, just absolutely incompetent and inept. Then you have Mitt Romney and Ben Sass and Richard Burr and the Paul Ryan type people. President Trump came in with a House run by Republicans, the Senate run by Republicans, and he was immediately investigated by those Republicans. For what? For Facebook ads? Because those Republicans have said, James Comey, that was his old administration, who cares? Clapper, Brennan, that's the old administration, who cares? We're going to have a new administration and we'll abide by what takes place. That's what they're doing now. Do you think they care about what John Ratcliffe says about anything? The director of national intelligence prior to Biden's administration? But they investigated President Trump. You have to understand, how did we get here? So for people who's like, nothing's ever gonna happen. Well, understand how we got here. It has nothing to do with Democrats. It's not that Democrats increased they obviously gained political power and influence, but they really are a political party on the ropes. They're fractured, completely fractured. They offer nothing to the most idealistic, passionate supporters within their political party. They're barely holding on as a political party. I mean, they need AOC and Bernie Sanders to really, unify whatever's left of the Democratic Party by promising things they have no intention of implementing. They lost to President Trump in 2016, and they did so because most Republican voters now gravitate towards a populist message. In terms of foreign policy, ending American interventions, military interventions, is a good thing. Okay? Bringing home Americans who have been stationed overseas is a good thing. Fighting nonstop counterinsurgency conflicts. Now, that's what President Trump was about. He had foreign policy achievements. You can go look at the Abraham Accords, first president stepped foot in North Korea. These are things that nobody remembers now. Republicans don't even champion these things. Every single achievement that when he was engaging in tariffs against China, that was a much better strategy economically than the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Well, they say, well, it didn't help initially. Yeah, it's a short-term political strategy. Before the pandemic, China was being forced to the table to renegotiate trade deals and discuss long-term economic deals with the United States. The pandemic changed everything, and it wasn't Trump's fault. Now you have, I don't even want to say his name, the top medical professional who now is embracing Biden's rear end and said, oh yeah, President Trump very likely caused lives to be lost. Oh really, top medical professional? You just stood there? How does this man circumvent blame? President Trump did everything this man wanted. Every single thing this man wanted. And Democratic-run states have the worst outcomes. So how is that Trump's fault? I mean, they make these absurd leaps of logic. But Republicans allow that to happen because there's no unified voice. They never embraced President Trump. They found him to be an outsider, just like Democrats found him to be an outsider. So we have this situation where Democrats have a virtual monopoly on political thought and discourse. They have the top tech giants on their side. Parler is no longer in existence. Anything that takes place, if it's a horrible tragedy we just saw, it's because of Parler, even though those people went on Facebook and Twitter to coordinate, just like left-leaning people do. And you see the violence and mayhem in the Pacific Northwest. And so Biden's silent on that. Media's silent on that. There's a double standard in terms of justice, in terms of media accuracy and bias, in terms of this absurd leap of logic. They're now going after, I was reading, they're now going after Trump administration officials for cruelty. Cruelty? President Obama's immigration policies were the definition of cruel, if you want to talk about. Like, there's a New York Times journalist who said, oh yeah, we got to go after these people because they're so cruel. He hasn't read the Senate report that talked about President Obama's administration handing, I don't even want to go into it with the algorithm. Read the Senate report. It's the most cruel, atrocious, horrific thing you've ever heard. And their rebuttal was, well, it wasn't a policy, it just happened. They never accept guilt. Do you understand? The mind of a liberal is pure condemnation and judgment at all times, and never even an acknowledgement that they engaged in even worse practices or the same type of practices as Republicans. So there was a Senate report dealing with very young individuals, and under President Obama's administration, that even New York Magazine talked about. There were articles written, orphaned by deportation. He deported more human beings than any president ever, President Obama. I mean, do you get even acknowledgement of this? No. It's Trump and his cruelty. And Trump signed an executive order. That was a bad policy. Family separation was 100% wrong. 1,000,000% wrong. Very bad policy. And yes, it was immoral and bad. He signed the executive order ending it. They forgot that Trump ended it. But they use everything for political gain because Republicans don't fight back. They don't fight back because they're petrified of media and they don't have a unified voice. You would think that President Trump would have unified Republicans. What'll happen probably is the Republican Party will continue to get outmaneuvered. I mean, almost certainly they'll take back the House, but they'll do so. They'll get outmaneuvered until 2022. Democrats will be able to sweep things under the rug, potentially, and try their best to create this whatever media narrative they want, like they've been doing. And then 2022 will happen, and then primaries. You'll have congressional primaries. You'll have more of a Trump type of Republican and an establishment rhino never-Trumper. And guess who will win? Guess who will lose? The never-Trumper is going to lose, almost always, or most of the time. And you'll have a lot more of a pro-Trump populist type of Republican that controls the House. Then you'll have endless investigations and people like Kevin McCarthy and Devin Nunes and Matt Gaetz and Jim Jordan, those people running the House. Okay? you won't have the Paul Ryans of the world. And then once you have the primaries eventually for, I mean, it'll be a while from now, but eventually for McConnell and others, eventually. But in 2022, you're going to have senators up for re-election again. The Senate will see what's taking. The senators up for re-election will see what's taking place in the House. They'll become more populist or more aligned with President Trump, and you'll have a completely different Congress. Because hopefully you could take back the Senate from Democrats. Hopefully Republicans can. There's no point if Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell run the Congress forever, the Democrats will get away with everything. Because they'll be petrified of media, and they'll try to, erase President Trump or Trump supporters from history. The problem is Republicans don't have an actual. The base of the Republican Party is now pro-Trump, so they're in this conundrum. It's now a matter of how long do Republicans want to allow Democrats to take over American political discourse and to run the American political paradigm. If Republicans spoke with a unified voice that addressed the good things that Trump presided over, and perhaps a little bit more diplomatic without the rhetoric, like President Trump shouldn't have insulted LeBron James, he shouldn't have insulted NFL athletes. I mean, even if he wanted to make a point, he could have done so in a more diplomatic manner. If you have a Republican Party that's a bit more diplomatic in rhetoric, but does the same things in terms of accomplishments as President Trump, you can't be stopped. Because then when media tries to say, oh, you did this, people say, what? Like, for example, the entire Republican Party should be saying, Trump had nothing to do with what took place in the Capitol. He didn't tell people to do anything. Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz should be on a media offensive. They're not. They're just cowering and hoping this goes away. That's not the way to state your case. Anyway, give me your thoughts below. McConnell wants to convict Trump. He's not going to, but he wants to because he's petrified of media, and Republicans don't speak with one voice. They're embarrassed of Trump, but they've taken every single political, every ounce of political utility, influence, power that Trump has given them. So they're like leeches. They've used and taken advantage of what Trump brought to the table, while at the same time, never accepting him as one of them. So now you have this situation where Democrats control political discourse. Give me your thoughts below. Hopefully, and I think by 2022 that'll completely change. Hopefully sooner than later. Thank you so very much. Hit subscribe. I'll be back numerous times.